Model Test 4, Listening Section.
The listening section tests your ability to understand spoken English that is typical of interactions and academic speech on college campuses. During the test, you will listen to conversations, lectures, and discussions, and you will answer questions about them. This is the short format for the listening section. On the short format, you will listen to 2 conversations, 2 lectures, and 2 discussions. After each listening passage, you will answer 5 to 6 questions about it. You will hear each passage one time. You may take notes while you listen, but notes are not graded. You may use your notes to answer the questions. Choose the best answer for multiple choice questions. Follow the directions on the page or on the screen for computer-assisted questions. Click on Next and then on OK to go on to the next question. You cannot return to previous questions. The listening section is divided into sets. Each set includes 1 conversation, 1 lecture, and 1 discussion. You will have 10 minutes to answer all of the questions for each set. You will have 20 minutes to answer all of the questions on the short format. A clock on the screen will show you how much time you have to complete your answers for the section. The clock does not count the time you are listening to the conversations, lectures, and discussions.
Listening 1, Professor's Office.
Listen to part of a conversation on campus between a student and a professor.
So what did you want to see me about, Ernie?
My grade. I'm not doing very well in this class.
Well, that's not exactly true. You were doing very well until the last test.
I got a D, Professor Adams. I've never gotten a D in my life. Before this, I mean. So that's why I'm here. I hope you can give me some advice.
Well, from my class book, I see that your attendance is excellent. No absences, so that's not the problem.
No, I never miss class. I'm a serious student. I just don't know what happened on that test.
Did you bring it, the test?
Yes, I did. Here it is.
Okay, I think I remember this, but there were almost 100 tests to grade, so let's have a look at it.
Thanks.
Well, Ernie, let's see. Here it is. Yes, I do recall this test. You didn't finish it. You stopped after question 15. So you had 5 questions that were counted wrong because you didn't complete the test.
I know. I didn't watch the time, and I just couldn't believe it when you asked us to hand in the tests.
Yes, I see. But you did a good job on the questions that you did respond to.
Professor Adams, maybe you won't believe me, but I know the answers to the questions
The ones that you left blank at the end.
Yeah. So now I need some advice about how to bring up my grade because a D is going to make a big difference.
This test counts 25%, so you're right. It will bring it down at least a letter.
I know.
Okay, then. The first thing's to learn something from this. You have to find a way to pace yourself through tests, or you're going to have this problem again.
I know. And believe me, I learned that already.
Okay, that's good. Now, what about the grade for this class?
I was hoping you might give me a chance to maybe do an extra credit assignment.
I don't know about that.
Oh.
But here's what we can do. If you want to finish the test right now, and your answers are satisfactory, then I'll add some points to your grade.
You will? I know the answers, really.
I can't give you full credit for your answers. That wouldn't be fair to the other students. But I can add some points, and that should help you somewhat.
Wow. This is great.
Okay, just take your test over there and finish it. You had about an hour to complete 20 questions, so that would be 15 minutes to finish the 5 questions you left blank. And Ernie, pace yourself.
I will. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
1. Why does the man go to see his professor? 2. Why did Ernie get a low grade on the last test? 3. What do we know about the test? Four. Listen again to part of the conversation and then answer the following question.
I was hoping you might give me a chance to maybe do an extra credit assignment.
I don't know about that.
Why does the professor say this?
I don't know about that.
Five. What can be inferred about the professor?
Listening to Anthropology class.
Listen to part of a lecture in an anthropology class. The professor is discussing agriculture.
Let's just pick up where we left off last week. Okay, as you'll recall, earlier theories about the development of agriculture tended to view it as a progressive event, or even as a catalyst for everything from art to industry. But I'm going to share a rather different view with you. From a revisionist perspective, the development of agriculture about 10,000 years ago didn't improve the lives of early farmers. On the contrary, when hunter-gatherers abandoned the age-old method of foraging for food and began to cultivate crops, they put their health at risk. Now, I know it's just the opposite of, it's quite a different viewpoint, let's say, so why would this be? Why would their health decline when agriculture provided people with an efficient way to get more food for less work? Clearly, cultivated fields yield more food per acre than uncultivated land with undomesticated patches of berries and nuts. Well, first, let's consider the conditions that are necessary for agriculture to flourish. In order to have enough labor to plant, tend, and harvest crops, a larger number of people must, they have to cooperate. That means that the density of the population must increase in the area surrounding the cultivated farms. And as we know, crowding contributes to the transmission of infectious diseases. So when hunter-gatherers were wandering in small bands, the likelihood of an epidemic was slight. But after the agricultural revolution, tuberculosis and diseases of the intestinal tract, these began to reach epidemic proportions in the crowded agricultural communities. And in addition, because the population was no longer mobile and relied on trade to inject variety into the lives and diets of the farmers, that meant that disease was also transmitted through the exchange of goods. Now, the revisionists also argue that the content of the diet for early farmers was inferior to that of the hunter-gatherers. You'll recall that hunter-gatherers enjoyed a variety of foods selected from wild plants and game, and in studies of modern tribes that have continued the tradition of hunting and gathering food, it appears that those, the hunters and gatherers, they have a better balance of nutrients and even more protein than tribes that have adopted agricultural lifestyles. Today, 3 grain crops, wheat, corn, and rice, these account for the bulk of calories consumed by farming societies. So consider the implications. Extrapolating from this and from evidence that early farmers raised only 1 or 2 crops, we can conclude that a disproportionate amount of carbohydrates formed the basis of their diets. Now, another interesting series of studies involve the skeletal remains of hunter-gatherers as compared with their agricultural relatives. And one such study from Greece and Turkey, it indicates that the average height of hunter-gatherers at the end of the Ice Age was, let me check my notes. Yes, it was 5 feet 9 inches for men and 5 feet 5 inches for women. And their bones were strong, healthy, and athletic. But after the agricultural revolution, skeletal remains revealed that height had diminished to a shocking 5 feet 3 inches for men and 5 feet for women. And evidence from bone samples suggests that they suffered from diseases caused by malnutrition, like anemia. And this is interesting. Further studies from paleontologists at the University of Massachusetts project life expectancies for hunter-gatherers at about 26 years, but post-agricultural life expectancies were less than 20 years. Let me just read you something from one of the studies by George Armalagos, and I quote, "Episodes of nutritional stress and infectious disease were seriously affecting their ability to survive." And he's referring to early farmers here. So, let's see where we are. Oh yes, consider that hunter-gatherers have the advantage of mobility. So if food wasn't plentiful, they broke camp and moved on in search of an area with a larger food supply. And if one type of food were in short supply, for example, berries, then they wouldn't eat berries, but there would probably be a good supply of another type of food, like nuts. Or hunting might compensate for a bad year for plant foods. But farmers were very vulnerable to crop failures. Remember, most early farmers cultivated only 1 or 2 crops. If there was a drought and the grain harvest failed, they didn't have other resources, and that's why they were subject to malnutrition or even starvation. So, as you see, revisionists have made a rather convincing case. To sum it up, according to the revisionists, the development of agriculture put the health of early farmers at risk.
6. Which of the following is the main topic of the lecture? Seven. What are 2 key characteristics of hunter-gatherers mentioned in the lecture? 8. Listen again to part of the lecture and then answer the following question.
So, let's see where we are. Oh yes, consider that hunter-gatherers have the advantage of mobility.
Why does the professor say this?
Oh yes.
Nine. How does the professor organize his lecture? 10. Which of the following statements best summarizes the position of the revisionists? (11) In the lecture, the professor describes the relationship between health and agriculture. Indicate whether each of the following is true or false. Click in the correct box for each phrase.
Listening 3. Business class.
Listen to part of a discussion in a business class.
In your textbook, the author states that companies sell products, but companies market brands. And several of you have asked me about that distinction between selling products and marketing brands. So I thought we ought to take some time to talk about it in class. Okay then, let me give you an example. Suppose that we have a company and the product is chicken. Then it's easy to understand that we're selling chicken. Maybe we're even selling a special preparation of chicken, barbecued chicken. And maybe we include lemonade and a hot roll free with our barbecued chicken. We may even have the best service. But we're still selling chicken, even though it's a special preparation and even though we've provided an attractive package with free additional products and good service. All of that is still selling. But what's marketing then? Well, when we market a product, we have to create meaning that attaches itself to the product. Something that makes the product more unique and more desirable than other similar products. Maybe this chicken was a family recipe that was handed down from Aunt Ruby. So this isn't just chicken, it's Aunt Ruby's recipe. And eating it is special because she doesn't give the recipe to anyone but family. And being in the restaurant is just like being in Aunt Ruby's kitchen. How you interpret the experience is just as important as how you view the product. See what I mean?
Yeah, so marketing is why the commercials on television are so hard to understand sometimes. Honestly, Sometimes I don't know what they're trying to sell because the commercials, they almost represent the product as something else. Success, sex, youth. So when a car is marketed, for example, it's shown in a situation with a lot of successful people in an upscale neighborhood. Or the man who buys the car gets the woman. Or the woman who buys the car is young and beautiful and desirable while she's driving it. You know?
Excellent point, Susan. I couldn't have said it better. Because marketing is what attaches that meaning to the product, something that is important to the consumer. You may not be able to buy youth, but you can buy products. And the message is that these products will get you what you really want. Okay, so marketing is selling an image or a benefit, something that's really attractive and larger than the product itself, and by attaching it to the product, we can give that larger meaning to what we want to sell. Go back to the car commercial for a minute. We want to sell cars, but we market them by selling something bigger first, maybe success, and by association, we sell the cars.
I get that part. It's pretty clear. But I'm still trying to figure out the difference between marketing and branding.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. Branding is similar to marketing because the customer perceives the product as being valuable. But branding is more about the customer than it is about the product. It's the personality of the product that people relate to. Think Allstate Insurance, and you'll probably come up with You're in Good Hands. And their competitor, State Farm, will remind you, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. This is an emotional relationship that customers have with the personality of the product. Rob Frankel is probably one of the most widely respected business consultants in the area of product branding. In his book, The Revenge of Brand X, he says, "Business is about relationships, not about transactions." That's not an exact quote, but it's close. And he's so right on. Branding isn't about the product or even about the customer service. It's about the customer's perception of the product and the relationship with the personality of the product. And that's how branding works.
So it's not just a logo.
No, it's not a logo. It's not a name, although name recognition or the familiarity of a logo is helpful. It's not a commercial or even a string of commercials in a marketing plan. It's more about loyalty and confidence and all of the things that make a relationship good. Customers have to do more than recognize the brand. They have to be motivated to buy it and continue to buy it over time.
But in the book, I think I remember this, in the book, didn't it mention that a company has to have a marketing message to build a brand?
Absolutely. It's a telegraphic message. It can't be very long, and it has to be easy to understand, and it has to be a consistent message. I mean that to effectively build a brand, and more importantly, brand loyalty, you have to repeat that message over and over. Say it loud enough and long enough, and it starts to sound right, and it starts to echo in your customers' heads when they think about making a purchase. So what's the result we're going for? It's when the customer will wait until the store gets more of it instead of buying a different brand. Or if the price goes up, the customer will pay extra instead of buying a cheaper brand. And this is brand loyalty, which is especially important in an industry where there isn't very much difference in the competing products. Can you think of an example of a product that is more or less the same across brands?
That's easy. Laundry detergent. There really isn't very much difference from one brand to another.
Right, but people tend to buy the same one every time.
So that's brand loyalty, and that happens because of the marketing message.
And the relationship with the personality of the brand. Okay then, how do we give our products a personality so we can develop a relationship with customers?
Well, Aunt Ruby is someone who we can relate to when we think about chicken.
Right.
Or I'm kind of thinking about celebrities. It seems like more and more commercials feature them, especially sports celebrities.
Thanks for mentioning that, John. Celebrity spokespersons are an easy option if a company wants to give a personality to a product. When kids think about Nike shoes, do they want a relationship with a shoe, with Nike, or with the basketball player, with Michael Jordan? It's pretty obvious that Air Jordan shoes are all about the basketball player. And that's taking branding to its logical conclusion, when customers have a relationship with a product and are loyal to the brand.
12. What is the discussion mainly about?
(13) Listen again to part of the discussion and then answer the following question.
Go back to the car commercial for a minute. We want to sell cars, but we market them by selling something bigger first, and by association, we sell the cars.
Why does the professor say this?
Go back to the car commercial for a minute.
(14) According to the professor, why do consumers develop brand loyalty? (15) How does the professor emphasize his point about branding?
(16) Why does Susan mention laundry detergent? (17) According to the discussion, what would be a good way to sell a product?